Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to Hanging with Mangg. Another week has gone by. Hold on. I don't know why this is... I don't think that fixed it. Uh-oh. Now it froze. Why is it being wonky? Oh my gosh. Holy shit. Okay, whatever it's at, that's what it's gonna be at. Okay, there's a white line at the bottom, whatever. And now there's nothing. Okay, we're having extreme technical difficulties with Dark Souls for some reason. And I can't even, like, do anything. What is going on? Hold on, let me just, like... I mean, it doesn't even really matter, but... Let me just... I have a lot to talk about, so I'm just gonna... We're just gonna... Welcome to Hanging with Mangg. So this week on this channel, we had the end of Final Fantasy XII. Oh my god, man. It does not want to cooperate. Look at... What the fuck? It's really pissing me off. Why would Dark Souls not cooperate? There we go. Much better. Anyways, we finished Final Fantasy XII. I am planning to move on to Final Fantasy 13 very soon. But I wanted to get started on some Warhammer stuff. So I started Warhammer 40k Space Marine. And we still have Doom going on. I think there's one more Doom video to go. And then we'll start Final Fantasy 13, so it'll be Final Fantasy and Warhammer, which are pretty damn different. And so it'll be mostly just sort of old games for a while. Or not brand new games. Kingdom Hearts does come out in a couple days. And I did pick up Resident Evil 2, so I've been playing that. But neither of those are Let's Plays, so that's what it is. Hey, nice. Really, that's about all there is to say about good old Mangg's LPs. Over on the Exploring series, we had Beneficial SCPs, which I thought was going to be a bit of a dud video. I didn't think that many people would see it, maybe, you know, 50K, and that would just be the end of it. But it's been really popular. It's over 180,000 views so far. It's brought in a lot of new fans, and it would be kind of wild if that's like someone's first exposure to the SCP universe, is the Beneficial SCPs, which are all, you know, somewhat benign for the most part, and, you know, not really indicative of the SCP universe. Ow. But I'm pleased that it's been popular. It's good. I also put out a video on the mythology of dragons. So the sort of mythological history of dragons. That performed exactly as well as I thought it would. It's hovering right over 30,000 views right now, which is fine. I knew it wasn't going to be... I knew I would get a lot more views if I just did another SCP video instead, but it was a Patreon goal that I set a while back. And so, it is what it is. I was mostly happy with it. You know, it's a very truncated summary. There's a lot cut out, but the artwork was good. So then this week I was working on a video on SCP-3000, Anantashesha. And it's a pretty cool SCP. You know, there's a few Indian names in there.
In the ancient legends, it is stated that one day...
And so, you know, pronunciation is always... that are questionable. But I thought I was actually really happy with how the video turned out. And I'm rarely happy. So I hope it's a big hit. It would be nice. It's an 18-minute video, so there's going to be a couple ads in there. So, yeah, we'll see. I've also started work on the first Warhammer 40K video, Introduction to the Timeline. The timeline is fairly straightforward. I mean, it's big, but it's straightforward compared to, say, the Elder Scrolls timeline, which is kind of fucky. Big and fucky. So I don't. It's not going to be that difficult. It's just more like, is it going to be good? Am I cutting out the right things? Am I including the right things? You know, is it coherent enough with everything that I am going to be cutting out? Because I am cutting out massive amounts. So, I don't know. We'll see. See how it goes. I'm sure it'll be fine, but will it be great is the question. Because it'd be nice if it was great. That's pretty much all there is to say about the Exploring series. We're pretty close to 230,000 subscribers. Probably hit that tonight, I think. And so that's pretty exciting. I'm starting to plan a big party in March, I'm guessing, for 250,000 subscribers. inviting everyone I know. I'm having Qdoba cater it. You know, I'm trying to... You know, when I hit 200,000, I said, like, yeah, you know, it's cool, but it doesn't feel like, holy shit. So I kind of want 250k to feel like, oh, holy shit. You know, I want to try and convince myself that it's really, that's a pretty crazy big deal to have 250,000 people be interested in what I've had to say and what I've put out. You know, maybe not currently, but at some point 250,000 people will have been interested in what I put out on the internet, which is pretty wild. Yeah, so I guess that's all there is to say about the channels. You know, it's just another week to forge ahead. Moving on then. Oh, so yes, I think last week I talked about how I was going to play the Warhammer War game, and now I can report back. I have played a little bit of it. Basically for the new edition, the 8th edition, there's a First Strike package, which has like a dozen minis. And it basically has like a few tutorial missions to teach you how to play the game. And so it slowly introduces the rules. So like in the first one, it's just like a bunch of little plague demons that are trying to just run across the map and try and escape from the Space Marines who are shooting at them. So it just teaches you how to move and then teaches the Space Marines how to shoot. Which, you know, as a side effect, teaches both players how to shoot, because, you know, you're sort of going through it together. And then the second mission teaches you how to do, like, close quarters combat. So it's like 6 Plague Demons versus 1 Space Marine Sergeant. And it's cool because it shows you that, like, a Space Marine, a badass Space Marine can fucking hold his own against a whole swath of enemies. So chances are the 1 Space Marine Sergeant is going to kill all 6 Plague Demons, even though they're, like, surrounding him and slashing at him and stuff. So that was pretty cool. And then the third one brings in the Chaos Space Marines, who are fucking badass, man. And the Space Marine player is trying to escort a couple Space Marines to the other side of the map, so they have to survive. And the Chaos player is trying to kill those 2 guys. So there's... And it introduces, like, terrain, and you can climb on the terrain, and the Space Marine has to sort of run interference. But the Chaos Space Marines are really powerful. And so they have guns that can, like, blow through, you know, Space Marine armor. And it's pretty cool. One of them had, like, this plasma gun that you could choose to, like, supercharge, and there was a chance that it would, like, explode and kill the Chaos Space Marine instantly, but otherwise it really fucked something up, and it was awesome, and it was cool. So overall, it's cool. Certainly. It's absolutely cool. And I could certainly envision myself getting into it and enjoying it and having, like, all these armies of chaos and the Imperial Guard and Ultramarines and all this badass stuff and Titans and tanks and just so much cool shit going on. The problem is, that will likely never happen. And the reason is twofold, really, and it's the classic twofold reason of all time. Time and money. And time is not so much my time, because I have plenty of time, and I would consider this... Well, actually, I did not consider it, but my mom convinced me. It's like, she said, this is work for you. Like, if it's related to your job and helps you, you know, complete your job, it's work. I never would have thought of it that way, but she's probably right. Because I would have never gotten into this without it being part of my job. So, it's not really my time, it's other people's time. Because other people, it's you know, it just doesn't work that way. And, you know, it's not like we don't get together for gaming, but we only get together once a week for RPGs. Anything beyond that, we consider an event that we have to plan, like, you know, weeks ahead of time or so. And if we do get together for a non-RPG situation, there's going to be 4 or 5 of us, most likely, maybe even 6. And from what I understand, you can do like 2v2 with Warhammer. But that bleeds into the second problem, which is money. Now, I would certainly be willing to finance an army of Warhammer 40k miniatures. You know, I would go on eBay and I would buy like a used lot, a used army that was pre-painted. And that would be my army, and that would be fine. You know, I'd probably get some cool chaos army. Or maybe a Necron army would be pretty sweet. That's what I would do. But that's one army, you know. And for me to play this with my friends, really, I would need like 4 armies. And that's a little expensive for me. And so it'd be like, hey, all of you, buy minis and buy stuff and let's play. And it's like, that's never happened in our... Like, they've never shouldered any burden of purchase for gaming. And it's like, you know, really, why would they when we have so many board games? And more importantly, we have unlimited amounts of entertainment from RPGs where I spend like $40 on a book and that entertains us for months. It's just, it's so much more cost effective than each of us buying a Warhammer army and who knows how often we'll play it and all that kind of stuff. It's just too prohibitive. As cool as I think it is, it's just too prohibitive to make it any form of a hobby. I mean, maybe if I was, like, married and my wife really enjoyed it and we just played it all the time, or if I was in, like, college in a dorm and that we all had armies and stuff and we'd shared miniatures and we, you know, just spend a lot of time with it, okay, maybe. But as it is, as cool as I think it is, it's just a lot easier for me to read Warhammer 40k books and get my fill that way, or play 40k video games. So I'm glad I tried it, but yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen. Speaking of RPGs, we've got plenty to discuss, and I've got, say, 40 minutes, so... for Roll Mangg and for Stars Without Number, there actually wasn't an extreme amount of events over the course of 3 hours. Oh my god. There was, so we're heading to the planet Eolus, which was this Beastman planet we'd previously visited. And we were going there because I had heard that they recently had this big council and they recently elected, or whatever, the guy that we had become sort of friends with as, like, their leader. And so I figured this was a perfect place to start our world tour, our galactic tour, to try and get all these representatives from different planets to come to a meeting to form a new republic. So pretty much we went there, I talked to him, I told him that, and he's like, alright, sure, cool. And that was pretty much it. That was pretty much it. As we were leaving, so Mert, last time we were there, he had gotten, like, this power spear after proving his strength to some merchant. And so as we were leaving, some guy, as part of this, like, warrior group, this death squad, this guy was like, our leader wants to duel you. Because they were pissed that he was not a beast man and he had the power spear, and a lot of people had problems with that. And also he didn't drink their sacred beverage, and so he really was just pissing off beast men left and right. And so they wanted this big duel. And he was like, you know, we can't do it today, the duel has to be tomorrow. And I'm like, fuck that. Like, do you understand what we're trying to do here? We're trying to create a galactic republic. And I set the date for the meeting 6 months from now. Which was sort of just a spitball. You know, we have 6 months to travel across the entire sector and visit all these planets and get all these representatives to a meeting. Why would I wait a fucking day for you to have some pissed duel that no one cares about? And so I did a precog just to see if he would win the duel. He would win the duel. I'm like, hey, look, I'm a precog. My boy here wins the duel. Get over it. We're out of here. And so we got in our ship and we flew off. But as we were flying away, we got accosted by 3 fighter ships from the surface. Because apparently this warrior group is willing to completely break the law and, you know, threaten, like, war. Because their honor. And so it's like, okay, you know, we immediately told, like, the leader what was happening. We have the best pilot in the galaxy, so we just evaded everything. We didn't get touched at all. And we just flew away and escaped combat. And so I'm sure they got arrested or something, and they got busted. So, good job, guys. You know, we've never had any space combat in this whole campaign, but our ship really isn't built for it, and there's nothing to gain from it, so we just say fuck it and we flee. You know, on the ground we're pretty ruthless and we'll kill quite a few things, but in space we're just not really built for it. We don't have the power armor equivalent of a spaceship. And so we go on to the next planet, which is like a desert planet, and we find out there's some pretty extreme water shortages. And we get greeted by some merchant on the ground who is selling some rare spice that's like their prime crop or whatever. And he wants to trade for our water. And so we can spare some water on the ship. And we find out the spice enhances a psychic's abilities. Like any of them, all of them. It just enhances psychic potential. Which is kind of funny that Ziggy would give us this. Like, he gave us quite a bit. Since I had already been sort of noting that I already feel a little overpowered as a psychic, and between my psychic abilities and our power armor, not much really is a problem. Because, like, with a good precog, you can't ever be ambushed. I can teleport like 1,000 kilometers at will now. Mert's like a powerful telekinetic, so he can lift all this shit and like crush things and break and burn things. Like, you know, we're pretty capable as it is, and he just made us even more capable with like some super spice. So that was an interesting choice. That's not what I wanted to do, thank you. Fuck. Yep. And so I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with the spice. I'm sure it'll come into play at some point where it's just like if I think of something really ridiculous, the spice will probably make it possible, but who knows? I think Ziggy overall tends to skew things to make us more powerful than we need to be. Case in point, the Artemis campaign, which, I mean, we became gods. And so, he doesn't really run many brutal, low-power things. So I'm interested to see how it is if he ever runs Call of Cthulhu campaign. But anyways, we go into the palace or whatever in this city. We talk to one of the council members, and we tell him the deal, and he's like, well, he's certainly interested, but he's not sure if he can convince the other council members. And they've been having a lot of problems with water shortages, and now they've lost all output from one of their cisterns or something like that. And so if we could go check it out, if we could go do this side quest, it'll be great. And so I precog to see what's happening over there. Jesus. And there's just like a group of rebels or something that have taken it over. And I'm like, yeah, just go in there with a full military excursion. You'll wipe them out. It won't be a problem. And he's like, yes, but if you could do it, it would be just so cool. God damn it. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, clearly, you know, I mean, this is what I pictured it was going to be. A bunch of these planets, we're going to have to prove our worth or something like that. And do some side quests. So it's like, okay, how do I wrap this up as quickly as possible? And in my precog vision, I saw, Ziggy told me he saw me like negotiating with these rebels, and we were discussing something. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I could do that. But that would take time to broker this deal, and so everyone's happy, and everyone gets their share of the water, and blah, blah, blah. Or we could just stomp in there with power armor and fuck all their shit up, and then there's more water for everyone else. Bada bing, bada boom. I'm a man pressed by time now, and so I don't want to be jerking around with a bunch of rebels on some desert planet. I gotta visit the entire galaxy in 6 months. So that's what we did. We stomped in with power armor and we fucked everybody up. And this is sort of where I think Ziggy and I just have a difference of thoughts on RPGs. We spent, I don't know, like an hour or so doing this. Because we went through the entire, like, battle. We went through this whole little cistern facility. And, we did every roll. And, we did the whole battle to see how it turned out. And blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it turned out exactly as I imagined it would turn out. Our suits took a little bit of, stress damage. We spent some ammunition. And we won. End. That was it. That was exactly what happened. And so it's like, oh my god. It's just one of those things where it's like, I believe it to be a waste of time. If we had 8-hour sessions every week, guaranteed, okay, you can spend an hour, doing battles and stuff like that. But I know that we don't have 8 hours. We have 3 hours. There's always a chance we'll miss a week. And our campaigns don't last that long. They just don't. They just don't. They're not limited in scope, they're limited in sessions. And I know that it's just a difference of thoughts and stuff, and some people do like combat and thinking about and rolling all the dice and seeing like, oh, I'm stronger than them, and look how powerful I've gotten and improved I've gotten, and blah, blah, blah. And some people like that. I just don't really. And really, you know, for me, the end result is the same. I mean, there might be minor differences. You know, when you do play things out, sure, certain situations crop up. But for this wasn't like some grand galactic battle that we're hand-waving. This is us fighting some desert rebels in a cistern with power armor on. Like, we know what's gonna happen, and that's what happened. And we could have spent 3 minutes just being like, okay, you go in there with your power armor, and you completely annihilate the rebels, tick off some damage and some ammunition, and there you go. And then boom, we have 57 more minutes to move on to other interesting stuff. Hooray. I don't know. That's just that's just my thought on RPGs, and I know that's different for everybody. But, you know, I'm DMing for my family now, and so they're getting more of a taste of that. Where it's like, okay, you don't have to do every roll down to the last enemy. If the tide of the battle is shifted and it looks like, okay, they're going to win, then I'll say, alright, you kill them all. They're done. And you move on. I've talked about this before in relation to Dungeons and Dragons, where you have these battles against, like, a group of wolves that takes 45 minutes, and it's just like, for fuck's sake. Who cares? It's a group of wolves. This is not exciting storytelling. I don't know. Maybe I'm becoming a curmudgeon-y old bastard, but I just care more about the big picture. And, you know, everyone that DMs, of course, cuts out certain things. You're not going to DM for a group where you describe every minute of every day of their adventures. It's insane. You know, often you'll be like, okay, you walk for a few hours. A few hours goes by. You could have played that out. Maybe something would happen, or maybe they would say something or do, like, no, you realize that this is pointless. You know what's going to happen. They make it to their destination, and then you move on. It's the same thing, but for some reason, because all the rules for combat are always so codified, people just run it all the way through and through. And I just never find it that exciting. That is not to say that there aren't some combats that should be done that way. Battles where the outcome is not certain. And even down to the last enemy, the last roll, something big could happen. I mean, in those situations, yeah, you play it through. But fucking battling against wolves? Battling against rebels while wearing power armor? Come on. Come on. And so I thought it was a big waste of time. But no matter what, if I had done diplomacy, or if I had crushed them all, it was going to take a while. Because that's just how Ziggy does things. And really, to be perfectly honest, I'd be fine with him just being like, okay, you know, 5.5 months go by, you visit all these planets, you do some side quests, and you get 80% of them to agree to come to a meeting. Maybe that would be a little extreme, and maybe a couple situations could crop up where it's like, okay, we probably need to dial in on this and take a closer look. Situations that we wouldn't be able to just easily beat using power armor, psychic abilities, bombs, so on and so forth. And maybe Ziggy will start throwing those situations at us now that he realizes, like, yeah, we're pretty powerful. But yeah, that was the session. We finished up the cistern and we flew on to the next planet, and that was it. And so it's like, I am not the like I'm not the sole person involved in these RPG sessions, you know? It's not all about my enjoyment. And so this is often really where you should have a discussion. But I prefer to just complain on the internet. But it could be that they enjoy all those little moments to moment. Maybe they enjoy playing out how powerful they are with their power armor and just blasting rebels with no consequences and blah blah blah. Maybe they like doing that and they're fine with that. And they're okay spending a whole session just visiting a couple planets and so on and so forth. I don't know. So, as it stands, we're just going to keep going at it. But like I said, we're always limited in our number of sessions. Because we just have so many other games we could play, and so our interests sort of shift, and we move on. It's inevitable. It doesn't matter how great the campaign is. But yeah, I certainly feel overpowered, which is a running theme recently in our RPGs. So that's why I think Ziggy is leaning towards Call of Cthulhu next. Just so we can go, like, I don't know much of ways to be overpowered in Call of Cthulhu. I don't know if it's really possible. Maybe. But I would also throw my vote in the ring for Dungeon World. Just because I'm DMing now, and I just think it's a really great system. But let's move on to talking about Dungeon World. Because this was one of their favorite sessions yet of RPGs, which was pretty cool. Considering it was all mostly improv. But they had gotten their magic swords. So they had their swords that glowed blue when enemies were near, and made them invisible, and they could shoot electric blasts, and so on and so forth. And they headed out from the wizard's mansion, and they headed north because they were on the trail of this. They were trying to find this criminal named Weevil, this dwarf criminal. No one knows what he did. No one will say, but there's a bounty on his head for 5,000 gold pieces, and they're very interested in that. I don't know why. You know, they haven't really shown any proclivity to shopping. And so I think at one point I asked them, like, why do you care about money? And I think they just said, like, well, it's money. Which is, I think, fairly common for new players. Just be like, yeah, money. You can buy all sorts of stuff with money. Without really focusing on, like, the story and being heroic and like, the character concept. I told him about, like, you know, I've played characters that gave away all their money and didn't like take any money for helping people or anything like that, and they were just like, why, what the fuck? So I'm trying to steer them more into becoming heroic, but you know, I don't want to push too hard. It is a natural progression. But anyways, they wanted Weevil. So they headed north towards Xantharl's Keep, which is the last place that he had been seen. And along the way, The section for Xantharl's Keep says that during the night, when they're there, the keep is attacked by a frost giant and a bunch of like ogres and hobgoblins and stuff. And apparently the frost giant wants to collect on the bounty, which is sort of funny to think about, but yeah, he wants to collect on the bounty. And so he sort of assaults the keep while some bugbears sneak around behind and get into the stables and grab Weevil. And this attack is presented with the assumption that... With the assumption that the players will come to the keep and stay the night. And so I could have done it so that they arrive at the keep late, like really late at night, where they don't even want to look for Weevil yet, they just spend the night, which is a presumption. You know, they could arrive late and look for Weevil, and then when they find him, they might still stay the night, because they might not want to travel while it's dark. So I could have done it that way. But I threw him another bone, as I tend to do. And I said, okay, in the distance ahead of you, you see a frost giant walking with like a big army. Fuck, why do I... Oh, my buttons are switched. You see the big frost giant and his army walking towards Xantharl's Keep. And so they debate for a while about what to do, and they discuss, like, okay, let's sprint ahead of them and arrive at the keep first. And I'm like, okay, it's going to be like 17 miles that you're sprinting. And they're like, no, you know, we're going to be so exhausted, and we're going to be useless at the end of it, blah, blah, blah. And so they decided, okay, we'll just trail behind, we'll follow them. So they follow them. And so they arrive to witness the giant start attacking the keep. God damn it! And they witness, again, I throw them another bone, because it would have taken much longer to realize this. I throw them another bone and say that they see the group of bugbears break off from the group and head around to the other side. And so they follow them. And the bugbears, you know, like I said, are trying to sneak in and grab Weevil. But they just assume that these guys are some assassin squad that are going to go in behind and cause a ruckus. You know, they don't connect it to Weevil whatsoever. Because they don't even know that Weevil is still here. So they slaughter all the bugbears. And they go into the, they climb over the barricade themselves into the keep. And they go to the garrison and they start helping out. You know, they man some crossbows and they help repel the giant. And so the giant is this is just a ruse. You know, it's just a distraction. So the bugbears can grab Weevil. And so after some time, when, you know, the bugbears don't return, and the giant's starting to get real hurt, he flees. So they would have done that regardless without the player's help, but there you have it. Basically, they accomplished their goal by preventing them from grabbing Weevil. So then they go and they talk to the Lord of the Keep. He doesn't really know much about Weevil other than he's a criminal. He suggests asking at the inn. And so they go to the inn and they ask the proprietor about Weevil, and she's sort of maybe heard of him, but you know, no one knows anything, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, they're never gonna remember. Clearly, they didn't write this down. I have to just remind them. You know, they're newbies. They are newbies. I have to throw them a lot of bones. So I'm like, okay, you recall the guy who told you about Weevil said that he was last seen cleaning some stables at Xantharl's Keep. Like, oh, he's in the stable. He's in the stable. We gotta go to the stable. And it's like, yeah, great. And like, it feels so cheap then. Like, oh, yeah, he's in the stable. And it's like, oh, God. Then I could have been an asshole and say, oh, yeah, he moved on months ago. But no. I was real kind. You know, they've never really done any of this stuff before. So I was kind. And sure enough, they enter the stables. And there is a dwarf there. And I was curious as to how they would handle the situation. But they just immediately approach him and they're like, Weevil! Is that okay? Subtlety out the window. And so, of course, he tried to also go out the window. But he is a dwarf, and they're all humans and elves. So they have a little bit longer of strides than he does. And even though he's a talented criminal, he's slick, he's dangerous, he's got short legs. And so they tried to tackle him, and I had him roll Defy Danger, and they rolled really well, so I'm like, okay, I won't make this real annoying. I mean, you grab him, he struggles, though, he pulled out a knife, he was trying to stab him and kick him, but with all four of them there, like, just grabbing him and tying him up with rope, and they got him. And so okay, we have Weevil. We've got him tied up. And the proprietor comes out and wonders why they're tying up her stable boy and blah blah blah, and they convince her that this is a criminal and blah blah blah. And so okay, we got the criminal, we got to take him back for the bounty. And once again, their lack of good note-taking screws them somewhat. And so, okay, we gotta go take it back to Mirabar. Mirabar is a city. But they believe that it's a person's name. Because they don't really remember much. They just wrote down the word Mirabar with no real context. So, okay, we gotta take it back to Mirabar. I think he was in Tribor. Tribor's to the south, right? It's like, okay, it's their hometown. Like, you know, yeah, Tribor's to the south. And so, okay, let's start hiking south. When, of course, they need to go north. And I'm like, okay, you know, they're gonna go back to Tribor, and they're gonna be told, like, what the fuck are you doing? We don't want anything to do with him. You have to go to Mirabar, and then they'll have to spend another week going north. But they decided not to gag Weevil. My aunt really wanted his mouth shut. She didn't want him to say anything. She didn't trust him at all. But the others were letting him speak because they wanted to know what he did. What was his great crime that earned him a 5,000 gold bounty? And the book does not say what crimes he committed. It's up to the DM to just decide. And so at this point, I had not decided, and I would not decide for some time. But they wanted him to say what he did, and I was like, okay, well, this guy, I decided he was a criminal. He's definitely a bad guy. There's no shenanigans. But he is going to try to convince these people that he was wronged in some way. Like, he's actually a good guy, and he's been wronged and framed and blah, blah, blah. And so I just created a story on the spot about how the counselor of the true king of Mirabar murdered the king and took the throne as a false king. And the king's honor guard, they knew about this, but most of them decided to just, keep their lives and serve the false king. But he would not have it, and so he fled. He fled knowing the truth, and now there's this bounty from the false king. I'm summarizing. He went into a bit more detail, and he said that he could not prove it. He himself did not have proof that this happened. But the king's sister, the true king's sister, did have proof. Princess Rosaline. And she was imprisoned in the royal prisons beneath the keep. And so if we broke her out, then, we could fix things. This is all completely fabricated. But my sister, I think she brought some sort of meta thoughts into it, and she's like, this happens all the time in stories where the guy you think is bad turns out to be really good. And so she convinced my mom and my brother-in-law that, maybe this guy is telling the truth. And, they weren't certain, of course. Because my aunt continually was like, he's lying to you, he's a bastard, just turn him in and gag him. But they were like, we're not going to do anything until we learn the truth. And so they decided the best way to do this. Eventually, I had Weevil tell them, like, you need to go north, right? Mirabar's to the north. So they turned around. But they decided the best way to do this was to break into the royal prison and find Rosaline and get her out of the prison. And I think they skipped a step, basically. They needed to ascertain for sure if any part of this guy's story was true before they jumped to the breakout phase. If they needed to prove that Rosaline was even in the prison before they had any thoughts about breaking into the prison. But they were headstrong, and I think my sister especially believed that this guy was telling the truth. And so they arrived in Mirabar. She went into the city alone while the others waited outside. And she took with her my aunt's sword of invisibility, because invisibility would help a lot. So she's in the city. She goes straight to the keep at the other side of the city. And she turns invisible, and she, pole vaults over the barricade and rushes over to the prison, and she, steals some keys off of a guard and opens the locked door, and her minute is up at this point. And clear, she is not subtle about this. A minute is fairly quick. You can do awesome things with invisibility within a minute, but she tried to do perhaps too much. Especially since they didn't even wait for nightfall, which was curious. This was a lesson learning experience. So she turns visible, like, just as she's locking this door, and there's 2 guards on the other side of the door, and she rushes down into the prison itself. She's not being especially subtle about this. They know she's there. You know, they're scrambling. She gets down to the lowest floor, because that's where Weevil said that the princess was probably being held. And she sees a guard at the other end, and she tries to, like, talk to him and say, I'm here for the truth, and just tell me where the princess is, and blah, blah, blah. And I had this guard act as incredulous as possible, like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's no princess. I have no idea what you're talking about. Please comply, put down your weapons, blah, blah, blah. The realization that this was all a lie was starting to set in, but she wanted to make sure. So she sort of like shouldered past the guard and ran to the end of the prison cells, and there was no princess anywhere in sight. So at this point she realizes, okay, we were lied to. Probably. So she goes peacefully, and she gets arrested and thrown into a cell. And now this was a meta situation for the others, because they, remember, 2 of them had pretty much believed, or had strong beliefs, that this guy was telling the truth. That's how they were operating. And now they had to continue to operate without the knowledge of what had happened and what my sister had seen. I think they played it off fairly well, fairly intelligently. I didn't really need to accuse them of any meta-breaking stuff, so it was pretty good. They decided after a while, since she didn't return, that they would go into the city and leave Weevil with my aunt, which was questionable, but the bounty was specifically for him to be returned alive. So she didn't want to kill him. They go into the city and go to a bar and start asking the bartender about all these stories about the princess and the king being killed and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't even have a king here. we have a Martian or a Martian or what. I didn't even know what the word was. It wasn't a king. And he told him a little more about Weevil, and apparently he was wanted for, like, murdering a couple families. Because I was like, okay, you know, I was sort of cruel to them with this whole series of events. I'm just going to make Weevil be, like, a really, really bad criminal to make up for it. Like, there's no question here. And Weevil, meanwhile, I had decided a while back, earlier in the session, that, after telling this whole story, that there was going to be a secret entrance, like, into the underground area, you know, beneath the mountain. Because Mirabar is, like, built into the side of a mountain. And he was going to tell him about the secret entrance, hopefully when they were sort of split up. And he was going to try and convince him to go down there, and then that's where he would try and give him a slip. Because he knew all the secret tunnels, and he would try and lose them. And I think I had just waited too long, because really he wanted it so there was only 2 of them left. But since the way they had split it up was 1 went ahead and then 2 more went ahead, leaving him with 1 person, which would have been fine if it wasn't my aunt, who didn't trust him a single bit. And so he did tell her, like, oh, there's a secret entrance. But she was like, I'm gonna put a sock in your mouth just because you waited this long to tell me. Like, she was just really pissed off with this guy. So she wasn't having any of it. She gagged him and blah, blah, blah. They come back and they're like, I think he's a liar, and we should turn him in. So they turn him in. I still added, like, a little bit of, like, questionability, like, you know, is this really all on the level with like the interactions with the Martian? He's like grinning that this guy's been returned to him alive, and he's so happy, and he immediately has him hauled off into the dungeon or something. But he did pay them. They asked for their friend's release from prison, and so he cut 1,000 gold off of the reward, which I figured was pretty reasonable. So they got 4,000 gold, which was an even split between the four of them. And they were very happy, and everything worked out. And they all thought it was an awesome session. My brother-in-law had been sort of questionable with his interest in RPGs, but even he said he really enjoyed this one because he liked the whole plot with the criminal and whether he was really a criminal or not. So I don't know exactly what aspect of the plot that he enjoyed, but you know, if he's interested in something besides just, oh, there's big enemy, let me fight big enemy, that's good. That's a good development. So it was a lot of improv, but I'm glad it all worked out and everyone enjoyed it. So it's going good. It's going real good. I think my mom is going to switch to a wizard again from a paladin. You know, I'm concerned that I'm just like influencing her too much, because I keep telling her like the potency of magic and the potential of magic, especially in Dungeon World, where you get like they have an ability called Ritual. I think I may have discussed this, but they have an ability called Ritual where you just describe a magical effect you want to have happen, and then the DM just tells you like the requirements that you have to first complete in order to have that effect happen. But anything is possible. Like you could like destroy a country, you could kill a god, like they could have just like teleported into or out of that prison, or they could have had a vision of if this princess was even real. Like, so much is possible with Ritual. It's easily the most powerful ability in the entire game. I mean, it's curtailed by the requirements. I mean, it might be like the whole campaign to achieve a ritual, but it is incredibly powerful and versatile, and so that just makes me giddy when I read stuff like that. And so I'm like, it's just, you know, that's just what interests me, and you know, when we're talking about problem solving and handling issues and situations, something like that is so much more capable than a paladin, at least in my eyes. And that's not what it's all about, because I do like playing as Ovum sometimes. But, you know, I'm telling her about all this, and so she's like, you know, I'm going to play a wizard. And I don't know if she has the problem-solving mindset to really benefit from it. But, you know, if they're all aware of the capabilities of it, they can all sort of use it as part of their brainstorming. So, yeah, it's going good. It's going good. I guess that's about it. So check out the Anantashesha video tomorrow. We got the final Doom video coming out this week. Some more Space Marine, and then Final Fantasy 13. Oh boy. And potentially, probably, the first Exploring Warhammer 40k video. But, my name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. And I'll see you fine folks next week.